Well, welcome to another episode of the Developing Dads podcast. Tonight, we are actually joined by a guest. And I say we, but my little brother's not here. Neil has decided that his daughter has brownies till late at night. He's got to go to London tomorrow and pack. He's got to go shopping. So he's basically bailed on me tonight, which is, not amazing. But I have, like I said, organised a guest for this evening. We have a Mr. Adam Boyd Brown.
Hello.
Hello. Hi. Yeah.
Hi,
Excellent. We've kind of known each other as acquaintances. I wouldn't say we're not best mates, right? We haven't ticked that box just yet.
No, I don't know if we've got each other's phone number yet. We might do, but I think that's always a good sign that you've gone from acquaintance to, actual kind of slightly better than that. I don't know what comes from that.
You're not just some bloke you met on Tinder.
Yeah. Not again.
Not again. Oh God. So Adam, we've known each other through sort of the fitness industry for some time. We've met in person. We even recorded a podcast of the Greenhorn Fitness podcast at one point, which never really became anything.
No.
So we recorded one of those. So we've known each other from the internet friends thing. And I noticed on his Instagram bio, he changed it to the parents health coach.
Yeah, that's right. It was kind of like when I realised that I pretty much only worked with women and blokes who were kind of 30, probably I would say 30 to 40, 45, and all of them were parents and all of them had the same problems. It was kind of like, maybe I should this kind of by chance, it's ended up being that. Maybe I should make that I'd say it's a niche, but it's not a niche. There's loads that will be saying that.
But you'd be surprised. I mean, yeah, so this is obviously the Developing Dads podcast, and I was quite keen to get him on because he is quite a relatively new dad as well. He does own his own business. He works with a bunch of clients. I'm sure you'll be able to give us a little bio of that at some point. Mm-hmm. So I was just quite keen to explore things like health and fitness, how he's adjusted to it becoming a new dad, how Adam's managed to incorporate it with his clients, and obviously kind of rebranding, but just basically helping understand other parents and their difficulties when it comes to health and fitness. If he has any tips and tricks for that. Also running through the inevitable sleep aspect of stuff, how he's managed it, how he's got through it.
Managed it.
And then he also runs his own business. So, when you run your own business and becoming a parent at the same time, you're kind of juggling lots of things from health, relationships, parenting, but also your own pursuits and things. So I'm keen to explore all of that. Just on the Developing Dads podcast, we do have a bit of a thing that we do every single week. And as I kind of explained to you at the pre-show patter, is that, me and Neil like to catch up every single week and ask what we've been up to, how are we, just because it's nice for blokes to talk, I guess. It's kind of a nice thing to do. So yeah, let's keep that tradition going. And how are you? And what have you been up to recently?
I'm good. Yeah, so I have been busy with the work side of things, but what I did manage to do today, which was lovely, is I went out and played 9 holes of golf with my dad, which was beautiful and well needed. I have been definitely, I would say, burning the candle at both ends, both on the work and actually the social side of things the last couple of weekends, which has been unexpected, and I'd kind of forgotten what that felt like. And so I could tell there was some time from the screen needed away. And so when my dad popped a message over this afternoon and was like, yeah, do you want to go and play 9 holes of golf? I was like, hell yeah. So I'm actually feeling in a pretty vibrant mood today because, I managed to get that. I mean, it did rain the whole time we were out there, but as far as things go, it wasn't too bad. So no, I've been pretty good, really. Can't complain whatsoever.
You're quite an accomplished golfer as well, from what I remember.
I used to be far more accomplished than I am now. Now it tends to be, I like going out. I like seeing my friends while I'm out there. I like getting a beer afterwards. And then the golf kind of fits in there at some point. So yeah, I used to be far more accomplished than I am these days, but there's always a dream to get back to being slightly more accomplished. And and when
good dad chat.
Yeah. And when I start making it a little bit of a priority to start, practicing and doing all the crap that you kind of need to get good at something. I harbour these ambitions that might happen, but for now, I think it's probably going to be on the back burner.
That's fair. I think you cherish those hobbies even more so. It now becomes less about being competitive because when you're 20 or whatever else, everything's competitive, especially the male.
Yeah.
But now, because you're just like, actually, it's just nice to not work or look after the kids or do anything but something for myself, which is kind of like pampering in some respect.
I know you kind of forget what it's like to go out and just do something like completely for yourself. And I think that's one of the biggest things that actually, when I speak to mums and dads and stuff like that, is when you say to them, so what do you do for like some you time? And they go, what? Like, what you time? Where's that? And that is always one of the biggest like hurdles to kind of to jump with people, because there's definitely an element of like feeling like that is a bit selfish in a way, and actually realizing that you time doesn't necessarily have to be go out and playing golf. It literally could just be 20 minutes or even less than that, you know, where it's like it's just time to focus in on yourself and stuff like that. But yeah, I think that's and definitely an area that I think, especially, it's probably mums more than dads, but I think we're probably all guilty of it, of like not ever sort of taking that time, being far too reactive with things, never really planning that time for ourselves. Like, how are you with that? Do you tend to make much you time?
Yes and no. I think it's often forced to some extent. So it's kind of like, I think we were talking about it earlier, where it's kind of you're burning candles at both ends, and then you realize you're like, I've really got to do something that's for me. And I think I've always been good at doing stuff, even that's alone, that's not necessarily with friends overall, just spending time on my own. So it usually is that kind of 20-minute, half an hour walk where you go and do something, or Olivia's at nursery, Laura's gone to work, and I know that taking an hour of doing pretty much nothing like, in that time, like no work, nothing, no editing, no working with clients, no calls, just kind of vegetate, maybe read a bit of a book or go for a walk and listen to a podcast, it's very revitalizing. And more so than it ever would be from back in the day when you're unencumbered and you're like, hey, let's do whatever I like.
You take it for granted, don't you? I think I think one of the biggest things myself and my wife say, like, is we were like, what do we used to do with all our free time? Because before we had Rose, I'd be like, I'm sure we used to fill our days with something, but for the life of me, I can't think of what it was, because I would have had hours and hours and hours of free time, you know, especially at like weekends and stuff like that. And I'm like, I have no idea what we did. You know, we always go with this, we always end up saying like, God, we should have gone out for more meals before, you know, or we should have gone for more weekends away. And yet at the time, I'm sure we probably felt like we went, you know, had a pretty active life in that respect. But now I look at it and I think, God, I wasted my freedom.
And life was just so disorganized.
Yeah,
there was no schedule of events for the day. You know, it's not like, because you know, the schedule would maybe revolve around food at some point. But even then, you're an adult, so you can kind of pick and choose when you want to eat because you can make it yourself, right? Whereas a baby or a toddler or a kid, you're beholden to their nap time or their feeding time or their wake time or their bedtime or whatever else. So you're kind of like, right, I'm going to organize my day where we get up at 6 a.m, we get out the house at 8 a.m, she's going to have a nap at 11 till 1, then she's going to have her lunch, and then, you know what I mean? Whereas before you got, I'm just going to get up around 9 or 8 or something. And
just get up when I get up, you know?
Yeah.
Just see where life takes me. And then I think it used to typically just take me to the sofa for majority of the day or something like that, maybe out for a walk.
Yeah.
And then it'd be like, right, it's nighttime.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because I mean, this is definitely, obviously, you know, same with everyone. You'll have your much more structure during the week, and you know, the kid, like, we're lucky Rose goes off to her grandparents twice a week. We have the childminder one of the other days, so obviously that makes things much easier. But when it's time, like the weekend and stuff like that, you live in your life by their diary at the end of the day. You know, it's kind of like get up in the morning, you'll be like, right, Rose, what's on your diary for today? We're going to be following that again.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I guess we kind of got into some stuff already, but for those that may not know who you are and what you do you have an elevator pitch? You know, you're at a wedding, you've got a pint of Stella in your hand, you're maybe having a cocktail sausage, and someone goes, so, Adam, what do you do?
And I'd say, I'm a personal trainer. And they'll go, should you be eating that and drinking that? And then I'll say, right, that's the end of our conversation about personal training. What do you do? No, I mean, in terms of my my elevator pitch, so yeah, essentially I'm a personal trainer, also work with people online, typically work with, like I say, kind of parents. It tends to be people in general who are lacking time. A lot of the people I work with are parents who are also business owners. I think naturally, just because when you create your content and stuff like that, you tend to write from experience. And when I write from experience, typically I end up drawing people towards me who are suffering the same things. So, they are raising a young family. They are trying to manage a business on the side of that. They are trying to get a little bit healthier. So in general, the people I work with aren't people who are looking for very extreme kind of health goals. One of the biggest things I hear is, I just want to get a little bit fitter and feel a little bit better, or get a little bit fitter and feel a lot better. And so obviously a big aspect of what I work with people on is much more than essentially the training and the nutrition nuts and bolts. It ends up being a lot of behaviors around stress management, energy management, and how to create change that lasts. I think my biggest value as a coach is I like for people to not need me. That's kind of the place I always feel like if I'm doing my job right as a coach, people should be able to get rid of me at some point. I shouldn't be there just for accountability's sake.
It's a great sales pitch, isn't it? It's kind of like it's Alex Hormozi kind of top line, I have nothing to sell you.
Yeah,
he basically just wants to buy your business to some extent, for those that are familiar with Alex Hormozi. But I guess that's kind of it. It's there's a nice tagline that I've always thought of if I ever got back into the game of PT. It's kind of like, either you'll never need another personal trainer. It's kind of like, it's a nice tagline, and I think I think that probably resonates quite nicely with parents, or just people who are trying, or like just a bit older. Like, and I don't mean that 35, 36-year-olds are older, but they kind of are. Like, they don't have the same kind of aesthetic aspirations and whatever else, and they've got when you hit that 30-year-old threshold, your adulting just accelerates like something silly. Your mortgage is much higher, your outgoings are astronomical, you've got a kid, your time's lost, all those kind of things. And I just feel like, you were talking about how you said you're not really in a niche, but given how young the fitness industry is, it is quite a bit of a niche for someone to actually understand appearance issues, or someone who's in middle-aged and understanding what they're going through and what they're doing. So I think you sell yourself down on that a little bit. I think it's actually quite a unique thing to have.
Well, I suppose, I mean, we're very similar in that, actually, like, we've been, you were coaching before I was coaching, but we were both kind of, I suppose, quite active online in the fitness realm from, our kind of mid to early 20s. And we've both done the same thing. We've both done bodybuilding shows. We've both been the coaches who worked, predominantly with a lot of people who were interested in that side of things. And actually, as times kind of evolved, and we've evolved, and our lives have changed alongside that, naturally we've realized the disparity between what someone like, us, who was perhaps entering fitness for the first time, would see if they were to go onto social media, versus what we now produce. If I was to think about how I would feel if I had stumbled across, 24, 25-year-old me's Instagram account,
and you were in cracking shape. Those delts and arms were pretty good. So,
oh man, this is where we could go and like big each other up here.
My glutes were amazing back in the day.
Yeah, well, this is it. They were never as striated as yours, mate. We just lost our audience now. But this is it. It's like, now I look at it and I think of it, and I think that is an area and that is starting to become, I think, spoken to much more often now. It's the person whose goals aren't completely related to getting ripped for stepping in front of a camera and stepping on stage. And now when I think about it, I think the most people I work with now, the idea of something like that would absolutely horrify them. And for that to be, my kind of sales pitch is like, this is my photo shoot challenge, I think a lot of people would be like, Jesus Christ, that's the last thing I'd want to do,
That's fair. And, I think as a long-standing, sustainable, lifelong business, I think you'll probably have customers till the day you don't necessarily want to do it anymore, because it's a much larger, lower attrition rate based market, I guess. You touched on sort of your early days of health and fitness. And, given the theme of this is about developing dads and how they've been getting on through the journey of being a dad, I'm kind of interested, you did the bodybuilding thing, you did the young 20-year-old, do the, bicep curls on the squat rack kind of thing. And then, you kind of get to a certain point and you're like, right, you're married, aren't you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Married, you got married, you had a kid. How did a child coming into your life perhaps change the trajectory of your training from a purely external perspective of like not being able to sleep much, time is different, you're just trying to deal with all these kind of everything really, to internally? So how did it make you feel in terms of your pursuit or goals when it comes to fitness? So start with the external stuff and how it affected you and how you overcame it, and then I'd be really curious to know how it affected your mindset around what is health and fitness.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing would be in regards to time constraints with training, in that I never really wanted it to be something where it was a choice between spending time with Rose or going and exercising. So it was kind of a case of, okay, well, now my window to train is either going to be very first thing in the morning, or it's going to be at lunch. It's going to be at times where she's not around, because as soon as she came along, I knew that from finishing work at 5, half 5 till she goes to bed at 7, half 7, that time that would have been my training time, back in the day, is now not a thing. And then the reality is kind of going and training at 8 in the evening was not something I ever really particularly wanted to do. Be too wired to go to sleep, And so it was kind of like, that was one of the first things, was knowing that if I didn't do it at that, lunch time sort of part of the day, or first thing in the morning, which can happen some days, but a lot of days I'm coaching clients at that time, it wouldn't happen. So I would say it kind of took the provision of choice of when I was going to do it out a little bit. Now that can have obviously one of two impacts. For some people, it works great in that it kind of did work well for me, and that it's like, well, I do it then or I don't do it at all. For other people, it can act obviously as a big barrier. It's like, if I've missed my morning window, I know I'm not going to do it later, and then all of a sudden becomes a bit of a harder barrier. So that's, I think, one of the first things was the time constraint of that. I would say the amount of time I wanted to spend in the gym was probably reduced a little bit as well. Previously it would be a session, I might be in there for a couple of hours maybe.
Wow. Because there's
some chatting in that.
Yeah, yeah. Because there's that thing of if you're not looking after your daughter, then someone is. And it's likely, certainly in the early stages, the first at least 6 months, depending on whether you went through the sort of the breastfeeding journey or not, you don't want to burden them too much because they're already like recovering, and there's all sorts of other things going on there. So you're like, hey, I'm going to the gym for 2 hours. Is that okay? No.
Yeah, I'd come back and all the doors would be like, locks would be changed, basically.
And you'd have a divorce letter.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And so that was it. I would say the time constraints, which obviously changed the way that the training needed to be set up to get it done. Sort of same as you, I suppose, we've been training a long time now. You're kind of at what would be the more advanced stage of training, in that, I couldn't really afford to just go in and do, the absolute bare minimum. So I still needed to get a decent amount done, but it would be knowing that was done in probably, an hour maximum, probably 45 minutes more often than not. So yeah, that was kind of, I'd say, the first things that changed in terms of the external side of things. I would say that your tolerance to how much you can do reduces, because all of a sudden you've got an extra stress alongside job stress, life stress, relationship stress. You now getting less sleep. And so that was one of the first things, was almost being able to swallow my pride of like, I really just don't recover quite as well as I did in my mid-20s, when I could, spend the most of the weekend just kind of chilling out and lazing about a little bit. So that was a definitely another aspect that changed in regards to the way kind of training was approached. So I would say it's more to do with, you do have much more constraints, and it's kind of like, how do you adapt around that? How do you work that around that in a way that's palatable at the end of the day? I could have been that dad who goes, no, sorry, Han, I'm going to go. And I know it's Rose's bedtime routine, but I'm going to go train, wouldn't have gone down very well. And I know that I would have felt extremely conflicted and probably enjoyed my training a lot less, knowing that I wasn't spending that time that I wanted to be at home.
There is that interesting conflict that you have now, isn't there? Where there genuinely isn't anything. There's nothing really that I've ever felt in my life as fulfilling as even just simple things like a bedtime routine with your daughter and your wife. Especially just because it's only 3 of you at the moment, I'm sure. So then that's a really kind of amazing family orientated time where you're playing games and laughing around and doing things, and it's a really fun thing to do. And that's often been the thing that I've kind of tried to think about and balance, is like, if I'm doing something else other than that or that type of thing, then there has to be some upside. And the gym is part of that upside, of course it is, but yeah, like you say, it's slotting it into times in which it's not needed or fun, or she's asleep or whatever else, right?
Yeah, and I think something that sort of needs to be aware of is like, you're always going to feel mixed emotions about doing something like that, especially like health behaviors, which often aren't always that exciting. Like I'd probably find it easier if Hannah was like, no, you can kind of go out and play 9 holes of golf right now. I'm giving you the okay to do that. The pull to do that might be a little bit higher because I get much more intrinsic enjoyment out of going to play golf actually than I do going to train. So the reality is my training goals these days are very much just kind of maintaining where I am. So like, not kind of feeling like I'm falling backwards in terms of my mobility, my strength, how my joints feel, all those kinds of things. And so the value of training, now it's become much more around just maintaining where I am, actually is lower than it used to be. When it was, something that was like, okay, I really want to progress on this. This is really, really important to me. Then I would have probably, felt a bit more driven to always make sure I did train the exact amount I needed and, never missed a session, all that type of stuff. But now, because the value of training to me isn't as high as it used to be, there is that more conflict of interest of, well, I could train, but I know I'd rather be at home, with Rose. And so actually the easiest thing for me is to take away that conflict of interest by doing it at times where the other option is, just eating lunch, and taking my time with it and, maybe doing something else. And so that's one of the biggest things. And I think, when you're somebody who is, let's say training is a part of a strategy to move away from a particular pain. So maybe it is, feeling really immobile, feeling really, really unfit and knowing that you need to make some drastic changes or, you possibly shortening your life a little bit. At that point, okay, the value of training is possibly a bit higher, but these are these conflicts of interest that people really, really struggle with, and is a massive part of why for parents, ambivalence, one of the things that they really have to work through, because they've just got this conflict of interest of knowing that they should be spending some time on themselves, but also that their kids, do need them as well. And that kind of goes on to, one of the things that I think is the biggest thing there is when you're in a relationship and, you have got a partner there who is also sort of supporting, is that I think a really big part of if you're trying to improve your health is to have basically support both ways, for you to make compromises on things, for them to have their time, for you to have your time, as opposed to both almost guilt tripping the other one into taking that time.
Because that was definitely a thing earlier on that I made. I think it was probably a little bit of an argument that we had about something. It was definitely like me going to the gym, or there was some sort of like that me time thing that we were kind of talking about. And I very quickly expressed to Laura that I was like, if there's anything we're going to do, and this kind of relates to another thing that I can question after this, but that if we're going to pursue some sort of health thing, where it's like going to the gym, going for a run, going for a walk, like just basically something that we both know will have long-term effects very much in the green, where if I can take Olivia and I can look after her and take any burden off of her to be able to go and freely have that clarity of mind to be like, I'm not, neglecting my parenting duties or putting pressure on Gordon. If it's definitely to go and pursue some sort of health thing, then I was very bullish on being like, look, you go and do that. You tell me you're going to do it, and like off you go.
Yeah.
If it's if it's not that, then let's talk about it. But if it's definitely a health pursuit,
and this is it.
Yep.
This is the same thing. If I was to, reality was, if I was, I'm going to go and I am going to go play golf, or I am going to, just go down the pub or whatever, I know that would actually have a different reaction. But, my wife is amazing. She absolutely, obviously supports kind of the health is an important thing to her, as I suppose it would be to someone who lived with a personal trainer, and it kind of can't get away from it. But she's amazing for that side of things, and we do support each other in that respect. So like you say, I think it's typically an easier sell when it's a health related behavior, but this is a conversation I have with people when I start working with them straight away, is how does your other half feel about this? Are they supportive of the fact that you might need to take some time is that something that they are kind of happy with? Because I think it's just such an important thing to have your other half on side if you're going to start pursuing some kind of health goal. And usually the dream is when I start working with a couple and I'm like, right, let's figure out each of you guys, when are you going to give the other person some time?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is about a teamwork aspect of things, and certainly when it comes to communication around health, it's so important, because we both understand the long-term health outcomes of an individual who exercises regularly. It's phenomenal. The factor of life is so much better, even towards later ages in life, to less risks of colds and coughs, and even though you get it pretty much every single week when your kid goes off to nursery or something.
How you deal with them, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It was kind of interesting though, you touched on the acute needs of going to the gym when you were in your 20s. So it was like, I've got to progress, I've got to lift more weight, I've got to maintain that arm pump that I've been loving for the whole part of my 20-year-old life. And kind of spinning it on that idea that has health and fitness and exercise, or eating healthfully, whatever that means, has having a child changed that for you to being much more of a chronic pursuit, where, like I say, you do recognize that, hey, getting around that 7,000 or 8,000 steps a day does actually reduce risks of things like coronary heart disease. And weight training will mean that if I ever fall over when I'm 75, that I'm going to spend less time in hospital. All those kind of things. Do you think having a kid has kind of influenced that push towards more of a chronic idea of health and fitness rather than that acute thing that you talked about?
Of course. Like it becomes a chase for longevity, as opposed to, when I was younger, it was literally what's in the mirror. That was all that really mattered. What's the reflection staring back at me? Whereas now, the whole aspect of it is to still be able to, do all the things that I want to do. Obviously running in the park and playing football or whatever. As I get older, as she gets older, that becomes the whole goal. And I think the difference is like, after a certain point, fitness becomes more a vehicle for what it lets you do outside of the gym. Whereas when I was, younger, like fitness was the vehicle towards being in the gym. What I mean? It was essentially a case of, this is where I want to be at this moment in time right now. I don't have anywhere else I want to go. All that matters is this rep right here, this arm pump, this reflection in the mirror.
No gain.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas now it becomes, what is doing this going to enable me to do outside of the gym at the end of the day?
You touched on like a measurement tool previously, and that was kind of what you look like in the mirror. For whatever that means to someone, and what it is, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, whatever it is there's some level of measurement going on there. Like, you're looking at yourself and saying, like, how am I progressing? And you were probably as well, like most early Facebook era fitness person, you were probably using some tracking tool or weighing yourself or doing other metrics like competitions and things. And that can give you pretty immediate feedback on how you're getting on, I guess.
Yeah.
So now that your pursuit is much more of one in which I want to be a granddad that climbs trees, like how do you personally find the ability to measure that progress? Because it's very difficult, right? It's very grey, it's very long term. But then also, how do you help your clients essentially understand that what they're doing right now is going to pay dividends in 50 years.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're 100% right there. Like you say, it's certainly a much grayer area. It's not a case of that. I mean, one of the biggest things I like with clients who do wear some sort of health tracker is just looking at what their resting heart rate is. That's generally a pretty good idea of how someone's looking after themselves in a very generalized way. You could be really, really, pretty healthy kind of metabolically, but if you are insanely stressed, we know you're going to be carrying a slightly higher resting heart rate. If you're underslept, you're going to be the same. So I like to use that as a very, very like overall sort of general measurement for people, getting them to do things like some daily readiness levels. So just in general, kind of how was energy on a scale? How was your sleep quality? Things of that nature, which more relate to how are they performing and functioning in general during the day. I mean, for me, like the thing that lets me know is how my joints feeling. Like if I'm not, if I've gone and it's probably been a long time since I've gone an extended period with not training, but if I've spent more time at my desk and less time being active in general and going out for walks and stuff like that, my back is lets me know about it if I'm not doing it. And so actually just in general, how's the body feeling is, I think, just a big one. So like you say, it becomes a little bit more generalized when the goal isn't related to weight loss, but or like I say, muscle gain or something that you're going to see in the mirror. But people typically know there's something that someone might have, and they might be like, it's a set of stairs. I had a client the other day and she was like, it's a set of stairs in London, goes up to a platform, and her measurement tool is how is she out of breath when she gets to the top of those stairs.
Covent Garden's the set of stairs is probably the one she's referring to. Yeah,
that's it. It might even be that set. But yeah, just things of that nature in general. Someone will go, like, I've just noticed this thing, and I'll go, wow, that's a great measurement tool. Ongoing, is like, well, let's keep with that, whatever it might be.
It goes back to your point about the idea that it's the gym now is a utility to function outside of the gym.
Yeah.
Rather than it being, you're functioning in the gym, which is kind of what you would have been doing previously. Whereas now you're like, hey, look, actually this is allowing me to do all these things at a rate that's far better than, say, the average person if I was comparing myself. But even if I didn't do it, then it's still helping me do all these kind of cool things like climb 143 steps or something like that.
It's a lot more powerful. Like another example today was a lady I've just recently started training. She said she picked up a 2-year-old grandson over her head, arms up, and she'd never done that before. She said she'd never even attempted it because she was really would have been worried about the idea of dropping him. And yeah, said boom, smashed it straight up there.
Wow.
And I think things like that, actually, they're just much more powerful when people actually realize it. I think what happens at a certain point, and it will be an element of sort of diet culture, what we are exposed to and stuff like that, is people's kind of natural go-to is their measurement tool becomes their weight.
Yes.
We know it as well as anyone, having worked with hundreds of people, is that people will say, oh, I know I'm happy at that weight, or I know I was comfortable at that weight. And actually the weight itself just doesn't mean anything. Like they could feel as great as they've ever felt if they were measuring with the right things at a completely different weight. And that's something I think is quite important, especially when people get to a weight goal and then kind of don't know what to do after that. And they're like, well, I don't really know how to measure progress now. I don't really know what a goal is. And it's kind of like, well, okay, how do you find playing with your kids? How would you find it when you lift your kids up from the floor and you're doing it with a bent back? And, how do you feel when you're just sitting at your desk? Do you feel particularly, lethargic, or do you feel like actually you're, churning ideas out? All of this type of stuff, which is a little bit less tangible, a little bit more subjective. I forget if it's subjective or objective.
Objective.
But yeah, that's it. where it's kind of like it takes a little bit of thinking about, but all of a sudden you really see the value of exercise and looking after yourself in a way that's much more powerful.
People just don't remember that. They don't necessarily remember the transformation as such. They remember how they made them feel. So it's like you were talking about the idea of weight being a metric that's very easy to tie oneself to, but actually they're talking about the feeling of what they felt when they were at that body weight, or when we fit into that dress, or those trousers fit snugly. But what I think you've obviously been very good at doing is kind of extracting that feeling out of an individual based on the things that they're capable of doing outside of the gym.
Yeah.
You know, where they're like able to pick up a child. It's like, well, how did that feel? Well, fucking would have felt bloody terrific, I'm sure. You know, it's quite easy to be able to relate to that, right? And feelings often drive you more than probably anything else, really.
Yeah, and I think the thing is as well is sometimes people they'll use comparisons that are actually have now become relatively unrealistic comparisons. In that the comparison they'll make won't be to how they felt, you know, a month ago or 2 months ago or 3 months ago. The comparison might be to, well, when I was, 10 years ago, and you're like, we're working off of different guardrails here.
When you were 20, you could survive on like 500 quid a month, and you weren't in £500,000 worth of mortgage debt, or 5 hours worth of sleep every night for the best part of 6 months, or paying a nursery 700 quid a month.
Comparisons a brilliant tool when you're comparing down as opposed to when you're comparing up. No one's ever been like unhappy with their house when they live on the largest house on their estate until someone builds a bigger house next to them.
Exactly. And I think that's it's a battle, for me personally, at times when I've been particularly unmotivated to go to the gym. It's because I do look back on what I've achieved in terms of my natural bodybuilding and sort of powerlifting success, if you want to call it that. And I feel like when I go to the gym, I'm like, oh man, like these 20s used to be like bicep curls, not dumbbell presses. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, and this is it. You sometimes do have to swallow your pride and realize what you're actually using it for now isn't the same thing. Every now and then the little gremlin will creep in, and I think, I could get really try and put on some muscle and get really in a aesthetic shape again. And then I think of the effort I would need to go to get there, and I'd have to give up a few, the few too many weekend beers that I have, and I would have to really be, anal with my training again, and not change it quite as much as I like. I like changing my training relatively often. I know those things would be necessary, but it's just not important enough for me to want to do that.
I mean, you've got a wife. The thing actually works because you've managed to produce a kid. So it's like, well, why would I go to the gym and compete with 20-year-olds that are basically just trying to pursue women and maybe not get someone pregnant, but at least go to the practice range.
Yeah, and I think that's it's comes down to self-worth as well, doesn't it? Really, like a large part of my self-worth was invested in what my rig looked like back then. It's not really as important. It still holds some weight, but more to do with how I feel like I look and fit in clothes than anything else. Yeah. Which doesn't need to be too extreme, to be fair. Usually the more extreme you go, the less clothes you fit in and the worse they look when you've got them on anyway. But yeah, I mean, as soon as your self-worth all of a sudden, once you've had a child and they're doing great and, they absolutely just make you feel proud every day, your self-worth massively can come from them. And all of a sudden, self-worth from physique and appearance and all that side of things do drop down. And the problem is with anything is, I think if your self-worth is too invested in one thing, other things start falling away. And you do see this with people who are really, really struggling with their health. Health is, it might be that most of their self-worth is invested in their business, or most of it is invested in their family, and they're an absolute wonderful caregiver for their family, but they're giving no care to themselves, which is possibly sending them to a poorer health and earlier grave than than they would want to be. And so it's kind of, I've always called it like your self-worth portfolio. Like I think it's important to have a very diverse self-worth portfolio. Like, even things like now having golf back in my life has given me a little bit of self-worth in that respect. I go, some days I might play quite well. Ooh, all of a sudden I've raised up my levels of that a little bit. My portfolio is looking good. I think that is something that's like really important, is if people were to look at their life right now and go, well, what's giving me most of my self-worth? It's likely it's the area that you're most succeeding in. The areas that you're kind of perhaps noticing that you're not doing quite so well in, all of a sudden it's like, well, maybe I need to actually bring up those areas a little bit and let some of the others, sort of not drop away, but, where is a position where I can actually get the support to put certain things on or delegate or whatever, so that I can spend a little bit more time looking after myself.
Yeah, because there is that. There is also the aspect that your kid's going to grow up, right? And they're not going to require you anymore.
Yeah, it's
so if you just pump all of your effort and energy and self-worth, like you say, into a child, then eventually they're not going to be there anymore.
I saw this horrible statistic, and it was like, how many days until your child, like, it's horrifying.
It is horrifying, but I think it depends on your general perspective of life, or the glass is half full, half empty aspect.
Yeah.
And I really liked it because it gave me a stark kick up the ass, where even stupid things like your phone's there and you end up using it when you should really be playing with your kid, or you're thinking about work, or you're, in a bad mood, or whatever situation that comes along. Like, we're human.
Yeah.
And I love that graph because, just for reference, the graph was basically talking about the time you spend with your colleagues, with your friends, with your kids, with your parents, with your siblings, alone time, and then your partner. And basically the biggest things that you have to make sure you work on is choosing the right partner in your life, because you'll spend a hell of a lot of time with them. Mm-hmm. Understanding how, and your ability to spend time alone is going to be quite massive as part of your elder part of your life. Mm-hmm. And what kind of work you choose to do. What is your vocation? That's going to be a very important part of your life, because once your kid grows up and goes into the teenage years, your time spent with your kid diminishes so quickly and rapidly, and at a horrifying speed. So things like that, like you say, that thing gave me a kick up the ass to be like, these are my golden years with Olivia.
Yeah. I think the thing that horrified me was looking at when you get to a certain age, how little time you spend with your kids, and it's like, that was what horrified me. I was like, oh my God, like, that just the idea of it, when you're in this position right now where they, you're their everything, and then for it to be like, and to be fair, like if I look at the time I spend with my mum and dad now, like, that was why actually today when my dad was like, son, do you want to go out and play 9 holes this afternoon? I was like, oh, do you know what? Hell yeah, I definitely need to do that, because, it's like, I think, like I always had these regrets that I didn't spend enough time with like my granddad, because he was a golfer, and I remember he would always want me to go out and play golf with him. And, it was a shame that I'd lost him earlier than, I should have done. And actually, I always just think, oh, I should have played that game of golf the week before with him, or something like that. And so, it's things of all that nature, all these things that you don't think about before you have a kid, and then all of a sudden it kind of it just brings your own mortality into light a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the worst part of me this is kind of slight tangent from the whole health and fitness thing, but it's a good one, because one of the things I realised, because my grandparents, I lived in basically northeast of Aberdeenshire, and my grandparents lived in Edinburgh, and that's a good 3.5 hour drive. So there's a big barrier to entry for us to travel from Aberdeen to Edinburgh to go and see my grandparents. So when I saw them, it was fantastic, but I didn't see them very often.
Is it?
And I think as I became an adult, my perspective on that was that my children, I want them to spend as much time as I can get with their grandparents, because the experience that comes from their lives and what they kind of understand and enjoy, and whatever kind of knowledge they want to pass on to our grandchildren, that kind of thing, was so important to me. So I basically just tried to manufacture it by buying a house 5-minute walk away from my in-laws.
Oh, amazing!
Of which I get on very well with, and they, I hope they feel the same about me. But it now means that when Laura's dad goes to the gym, for example, which is a local gym just down the road, on his way back, he walks up past and has a cup of tea, and inevitably he'd play with Olivia, or they can easily go and pick up Olivia or whatever. Like it's a very, very interesting thing, because I think strong relationships on that front, certainly grandparents and parents aspect of things, it's often micro conversations and micro events that build a relationship over, going to a birthday or an anniversary or going on a family holiday or whatever else. So the little things like going and playing golf with your dad, for example, that's such a micro thing to go and do, but it has huge impact.
Yes.
I think on their lives as well, because I've seen them increase in energy and vitality by having a grandchild around often. They'll be running around with them all the time, and it keeps them fit and healthy and young, I think.
Yeah. Oh, no, definitely. Like, at the end of the day, I think there's a good reason why, the grandparents, like, are more than happy usually to, if you want to offload, they're, brilliant, because I think it just, like you say, it gives that second lease of life. It's like having a youngster again, isn't it? And it's kind of amazing what having the right mindset and the right, like, the right reason can kind of bring out on someone in regards to energy. It's like the stuff that they've done on, kids of like, kind of nursery age, going into like old people's homes and spending the time, and how it has such a massive impact upon their mental health. It's huge. It's massive.
It is, because it's kind of an interesting thing going for a walk with Olivia, and I wonder if you'll find that with Rose, is that you'll go for a walk with them and you're discovering stuff that you would just normally just walk past because you got a pair of headphones on and don't give a shit. When you walk past a puddle and it's like, it's basically the greatest thing they've ever come across in their entire lives. And you kind of get wrapped up in this idea of like playing in a puddle with them, and you're a grown ass man paddling around in the puddle.
I know. Like you say, it just makes you appreciate the little things a lot more.
It really does. It's slow first of all, I think because of the pace at which they walk, you end up taking about an hour to get anywhere. But it does make you stop, and it makes you kind of, because we are now so bombarded, not only with just the normal kind of mid-30s, midlife type of social and financial and cultural pressures that come along with all of it, and now you've got obviously your mobile phone in your pocket and the contactability and notifications. The fact that you can go for a walk, and if you can turn all those things off, and it's just you and your daughter, or it's just you, your daughter and your wife, or your family, or whatever it's going to be, it's such a peaceful moment that it's hard to describe how good it is.
It's just being like truly present, isn't it? That's the difference between it. Like I obviously spend, and I'm as bad as anyone. I spend a lot of my week being quite reactive to things at times, not fully always being present. Not that I do this when Rose is around. I'm pretty good with being present when she's around, but and then all of a sudden the days kind of blend. Time goes and you don't really know where it's gone, and you've kind of lived through this whirlwind where you've not really taken any time. Whereas, as you say, like when you spend it and you're going for a walk, and that hour that you're going for a walk, it does feel like it lasts a lot longer than that, because you're taking everything in. It's a lot different, isn't it?
It is, and that's a nice little segue into how long have you run your own business for?
7 years now.
Seven long years of business. So you've managed to get past that 5-year hump where basically all businesses fail.
I know. Well, I remember the first being told, it was like, PTs only last on average about 6 months. I was like, brilliant. Like, I think after about 6 months, I'd literally like just about broken even. I was like, this is success right here.
Nice.
This is what success looks like.
I remember those days. Like, this is very much a tangent, but I just remember getting paid minimum wage to be a gym instructor. That was painful. That was like £900 net after tax.
I did. It was like a little thing the other day, and I was working out. It was like for an Instagram post, and it was kind of working out how much I'd made. And I think it was something like, after all my outgoings or something like that, after my 3rd month of being a PT, I think I'd made like, it was like £275 or something was like the profit, and I at this point was, putting all the hours in, just trying to build it and stuff like that. And I worked out that the hourly was less than a farmhand from like Bangladesh. And I was like, well, it took some going.
Gotta make this work.
Wasn't always a guaranteed success.
And now you've been doing it for a little while. I'm sure there's some you're able to manage your diary and you've got some more autonomy because, you know, you've built up a business and reputation and all those things that come with that, which is always healthy and nice. But do you feel having a daughter, or just having a child, to be fair, has having your own business been a blessing, or has it been does it tear you up inside a little bit more because now you are providing and you have to now perform, rather than this being like a fun hobby where you're like, hey, I work in a gym, I'm a personal trainer, it's real cool?
Yeah. No, I'd say it's a bit of both, really. Because it's very, very much scenario dependent. You know, if I need to take an afternoon off, I can do that. I would say the thing that is becomes more difficult is being able to be really fully present at all times. That becomes the more difficult thing, because even when the phone's not in front of me, you know, it might be that something's come into my head. Oh shit, I didn't do that. Or, you know, some sort of idea hits you at some point, and then, you know, you do find yourself sometimes struggling to switch that off. And it's not, you know, I don't think it's ever a balance that you'll get right, because if your business is something you care about, inadvertently, you know, you're going to think about it at times. You kind of can't ever switch that off, or I don't think you really can. I think if the majority of the time you can be as present as possible, that's great. I would say that the fact that, you know, I have control over my own diary, I have the autonomy of making my own decisions in regards to when I do and don't work, I would say it's more good than bad. But, you know, that's, like I say, it's still kind of quite scenario specific, as there'll be times where I'll go, oh, I wish I could just, you know, have turned off the laptop and really left it there. But it's ongoing.
I mean, the grass is always greener on the other side because it's covered in bullshit. So it's
this is true.
There's part of that, and I think the huge benefit of, and I'll deem success as your ability to survive and pay your bills based on having your own business. The ability to have success within your own business and have a huge amount of autonomy over when you work. Is I found as a young dad, especially, to be there and present for my wife when, you know, the first you'll know it, first 2 to 4 weeks after giving birth, it can be a really tumultuous, it's probably the best word I can describe it, where it's kind of hormones are really up and down. There's lots of recovery, there's lots of adjustment for all of us. Granted, we don't get any paternity leave, but that ability to be like, hey, I can work this day, but I can't, I'm going to take this day off, rather than, you know, having to do a full-time job that's 40, 50 hours a week, and you've got to be a desk 9 to 5 and basically just turn up after those 2 weeks roughly for most dads. I found that having my own business and be able to say, I'm off this day, like, I don't work on a Monday, I look after Olivia, that's my daddy daycare day, and that's it, right? And that's phenomenal compared to most dads. Like, most dads that have normal quote-unquote jobs, that kind of thing just doesn't happen. And I feel very
this is
lucky.
You know, you're when you are employed, unfortunately, you are typically always going to have to work within someone else's framework, in terms of either the time that you've got to be available for, and then that means the time that you have to be technically off for. You know, you don't really get a choice what your free time is. Your free time is when you're not working, you know, when the office tells you shouldn't be working. Whereas, you know, you do obviously have that luxury of, actually, my week is this much, you know, it's this long and it's this many hours. And if I want to work a window there, I can work it there. If I, you know, want to work a window there, so I can have this time off, where, you know, technically, if I wanted to take a Monday morning off, you know, I could move people to another place. And I think that is the real kind of benefit. And that's why I'd be useless at being employed these days, because I'd be like, what do you mean that it's meant to be in?
What? I tried it for a little while, and it's not what it's cut out to be. It's being employed for like 40 hours a week, and, you know, going in every day, and I
did 10 years of it, so that was enough.
Fair enough. Usually we try and keep the Developing Dads pod. We could probably keep talking for hours, but usually keep this podcast to about an hour. I just think it's sometimes it's a reasonable amount of time. We've already done like 55 minutes. So
I was just going to say, like, if anyone's still listening, fair play to them.
Yeah, I usually remark that we get to a point of about 2.5 or 3.5 listeners by this point at the end of the podcast. So if someone is still listening, they're still listening. That's fantastic. But I guess if this episode, like I did explain to Adam, for those of regular listeners will know this, but I did explain that this podcast for me and my little brother, it is time for us to catch up, but it's also a time for us to record ourselves talking about the various things that we go through as dads, raising our children and trying to do whatever the hell the best thing is to do with it and working it all out, and to essentially immortalize these conversations. And for when my children have grandchildren and they have grandchildren and whatever else, and they're able to be like, oh, what was my great granddad like? What was his ideas and thoughts and feelings and views and whatnot? So, do you have any thoughts on the legacy that you're leaving Rose, in terms of what kind of father you're being and what you hope to teach her and help her with?
Yeah, I would say the thing that I would like her to always have is that confidence just to try stuff, try new things. I think there's always something to be gained from, even if it's, it turns out to be a massive failure. You've just learned something. You've learned how not to do it, and you will become a better person for having done that. You'll learn something. And I think that's one of the biggest things there, is if you don't try something, you don't kind of just gently nudge yourself out of the comfort zone, you will find yourself feeling like you're not growing as a person. And I think that's always something, is if you can feel like you're challenging yourself in some way, shape or form, your confidence will always grow, your ability to be with others, your vitality, how you feel, you will feel much happier in yourself. And that's probably the thing I'm going to most try and instill in her, is the want to try new things and just stay curious, pretty much.
Be curious and be brave.
There you go. Love that. It works really well in a Scottish accent, that.
Pretty sure Mel Gibson said that at the start of be curious and be brave.
It's written on a sign up behind you, isn't it?
So where, if people want to find out who you are, what you do, how they could even work with you at some point, how would they do that?
Yeah, I would say the best place to probably send is at Build by Brown PT, all one word. That's just the Instagram, Facebook handle. To be honest, I put more on Instagram than I do Facebook. Facebook channels certain things through, but not all of it. So there might be a random post that pops up sometimes on the Facebook, but yeah, just give a little follow through Instagram. Everything's on there. I've got all sorts of freebies on there as well. But if you want to kind of have a good chat, then all my details are on there.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate you spending some time with us. My hard sell of this gets no views, no listens, and it'd be nice to just talk about dad stuff. Then I appreciate you sat down and done with this. And then at the very least, you might be able to clip it and put some content pieces and things together for yourself. Which is always nice, right?
I know you'll provide some gold for me, mate. I know your editing skills are right up there, so I have full faith in those.
Excellent. Yeah, for the 3.5 listeners that I've got here, you can find us on the Developing Dads Instagram page, where my little brother basically just doesn't post the reels. That's his responsibility to get them made. So maybe he'll make some out of these, maybe he won't. If you want to try and find out, then check out Developing Dads on Instagram. You can find us obviously in all sort of various podcasting things. If you're not listening on Spotify, I don't know what you're listening to it on, because it's a weird platform outside of anything like that. But yeah, thanks very much for joining me, Adam. And
my pleasure.
Maybe at some point down the line, when we have another one, we can talk about baby number 2 and how that's affected us, and how much non-gym we're going through.
Yeah, that's it. I imagine that one it'll be a lot less levity in that one. We'll probably sound a lot more tired.
Yeah, and my hairline will definitely go much further back.
Yeah, it will start where the headphones end.
The head's shaved. That's basically what's happened. All right, thanks, Adam.
Cheers, mate. Take care, bud.